Hey everyone. So this next episode of the Lucifer Project Series needs a little bit of an introduction. Today we're going to be talking about this guy right here, the Trump Temple coin. Now, that seems kind of silly, and what does it have to do with anything? The funny part about this is a little bit of a story, and I'll show you a close-up of this in a second. Trisha and I actually filmed this many, many months ago. In fact, it was the very first episode we ever filmed. We just haven't released it yet. And we decided, with world events going the way that they're going, now is the time to release this video, because we're going to be talking about how this coin interacts with current events in Israel and Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran, and it's actually a really, really crazy story. So first, let me give you a close-up of this coin, because when we first filmed this video, we actually did not have a copy of this coin, but we do now, so let me show it to you. So here is the Trump Temple coin and a cat watching us from behind. Okay, as you can see, if I try to zoom in, you can see there's an unmistakable image of Donald Trump, and there's this guy behind him. And we're going to get into who that is in the episode ahead. But that is actually an ancient ruler of Iran, or an ancient leader of Iran. So what we have here in the front of this coin is an Iranian leader, a U.S. president, and when I flip it around, that is a Jewish temple. So what do the three of those things have to do with each other? And you may be surprised to find out the answer is a lot. So before we get into that, obviously this episode, I want to just take us back in this introduction as to what's been going on over the last year. So just a few days from now, Israel is going to be, I guess the word is honoring, the 1-year anniversary of the terrorist attack from Hamas out of the Gaza Strip into Israel, where approximately 1,200 Israelis were killed in that horrible strike. To put into perspective, as a U.S. citizen, on a per capita basis, the amount of people who died in that attack in Israel would have been equivalent to 9/11, losing around 40,000 Americans. So that tells you how much of an impact this had in Israel. Can you imagine if we, as a U.S. citizen, if we had lost 40,000 people in that attack? It was horrible enough at 3,000. Imagine 40,000. So since that attack occurred, Israel, launched their own retaliatory strikes against Hamas in Gaza and in the West Bank. And then during that whole time frame when that was going on, Hezbollah in the north has been launching rocket after rocket after rocket into Israel. So much so that the Israelis had to move their northern citizens out. So over 100,000 Israelis have been displaced over the course of this last year because of Hezbollah rockets going into northern Israel. And it was just about maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, that Israel finally retaliated against Hezbollah in the north with their pager attack and with the radio attack that I'm sure you're all familiar with. A lot of Hezbollah terrorists were maimed or killed in that attack. And then they started going against the leaders with airstrikes and even targeted ground attacks into Lebanon. And then it was just 2 days ago that Iran retaliated by launching over 200 cruise missiles into Israel, which were largely shot down. But that was a huge escalation of this war. So we have Gaza, West Bank, Lebanon, Hezbollah, Hamas, Iran, all this stuff going on in the Middle East. It's about to burn. And this coin, and the history of this coin, will really help us understand a little bit about the why. So I encourage you to, watch this whole video. We know it's a little bit more history than usual, and it's a fairly long one, but there's a lot of good information here. I hope you're blessed by it, and sit back and enjoy.
Hi, my name is Trisha Flagg. I'm here with my husband, John Flagg. He just finished a couple books called the Lucifer Project Series. And when you were doing this, you did a lot of research and found a lot of fun things. And that's why we're here today we decided to have a little bit of a conversation series on your research and some different topics. However, today, it's not in the book.
Today is just for fun.
Right.
Today's got Donald J. Trump's name tied to it. And of course, love him or hate him, he's always in the news. So, this
Why not talk about him?
What's that?
I said, so why not talk about him?
Yeah, why not talk about him? Let's have some fun. Today, we're going to talk about a temple coin. And you're like, well, what's a temple coin? Well, we'll get to that. But there is a temple coin with Donald J. Trump's face on it. Now, you have to understand that a temple coin is a Jewish coin. So why is Donald Trump's face on a temple coin, and the plot thickens when behind Donald Trump you see another guy's face, and this other guy's face is clearly an ancient guy, like BC era kind of guy. So who is this guy? Why is Donald Trump on this coin, and why is it a Jewish coin? So that's what we're going to be doing today. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Right. All right.
So,
We
ready to
can
get started?
right into it.
All
Yeah.
right.
Let's get
So, why don't we just describe what this coin looks like, everybody, for everybody, because they're going to be on audio, a lot of people. So, you want to take a stab at kind of just talking about what you see on the back of this coin?
You had printed out a picture of it here. Oh, I want to tell you, when you told me about this podcast, I went ahead and ordered one of these coins.
Woohoo.
I found it on eBay. They have it on Amazon, but it's a little bit more expensive. But I found it for like $10 on eBay. But unfortunately, it wasn't in on time, so can't show it. But on this coin, for anyone listening, it looks like the top of the coin.
Well, let's just start in the back. Let's go to the back.
in the back.
Yeah, let's talk about the back coin. What is that?
That is the temple.
Yeah, so what we have on the back of the coin is a representation of Solomon's temple. There's a bunch of other stuff on there. There's some Hebrew writing and whatnot, and we're not going to get into that on this podcast. But why is there a picture of the Solomon's temple on the back of this coin? So are they celebrating what was? Because we're going to get into all this, but that temple is gone. It was destroyed a long time ago, right? So are they celebrating what was way back, or are they celebrating something to come? We'll get into all this. Okay, so that's the back. What do you see on the front of the coin?
The front of the coin, well, down at the bottom, I see Donald Trump.
Unmistakable.
A Arab behind him.
That's right.
Yeah,
Very
I think
handsome
that's
chap.
who you're going to talk about.
We are.
Right? There is, there's a seal, like the American seal there.
Right. Well, let's get into that. So I think that's very clearly, for those who don't know Donald Trump's very clear image in the future, they will know that that is, in fact, an American, because there is a seal of the United States of America right over his shoulder.
Right. And then there's another opposite seal with the lion holding a sword.
So that seal says the Persian Empire.
Okay.
So we have
That's
this
the
guy.
Persian king.
Yeah, so we have this guy next to Donald Trump, and he's clearly now a Persian king or emperor. We're going to get into all this, of course. We're going to answer all these questions, but clearly that's the seal of Persia. And so, for all of us, listening, please understand that Persia is modern day Iran. So as we get into all this, remember, Persia is modern day Iran. So clearly this guy's an Iranian, and it gets me thinking right off the bat. I don't know about you. Now, wait a minute. There's an Iranian guy, an American president, and a picture of Solomon's temple all on this coin. What the heck is going on? Well, we're going to dive into it and explain it all. And there's one other thing I want to point out on the coin. It looks like I don't know, what do you want to call it? That first thing in a wine cork? What is that thing?
Yeah, that. Well, you had told me what it is, but I'm not going to spoil it. I said it looked like a wine cork when I did not know what it was.
Right.
But I see that it's underneath the Persian coin.
Yeah, so for in that Persian, that symbol of the Persian Empire, right below that, there's this thing. It honestly does look like a wine cork, and we are going to explain what that is. It's obviously not a wine cork. So, ready to get started?
Yes.
All right, this is going to be fun. So, our journey to understanding what the heck this coin is all about is going to start at 1000 BC. So, we're going to talk about Israel. 1000 BC. The nation of Israel has gone through all the hardships in Egypt. It's gone through, all the years in the desert. It's now crossed the Jordan. It's gone in and conquered the lands that we currently know as Israel today. All that stuff is in the past. And now they're kind of living their heyday under King David. And King David, in give or take 1000 BC, declares Jerusalem is the eternal capital of Israel. Mm-hmm. Okay? It's going to be super important for us much later down the line on this explanation of the coin. But remember, that was around 1000 BC. King David said Jerusalem is the eternal capital of Israel.
Right.
Okay. So what happens next? Of course, we know King Solomon comes after King David. King Solomon builds this temple that you so wisely pointed out on the back of the coin.
Right.
And so...
King David never built the temple.
That's right.
It was his son Solomon.
Exactly. So Solomon built it.
Yep.
So then Solomon eventually dies, and there's a lot of history here. We're just kind of blowing through it real quickly. And by the way, we're just going to talk about real high generalities on some of these things, like the dates. I'm not going to give specific dates. We're just going to say in the era of, because we're just going to keep things moving along and just have some fun with it.
This is not like a intense
it's not a history
Bible
course.
study or anything like that.
So after Solomon dies, the nation of Israel actually splits into two. And I remember when I first read the Bible, I was so confused because I didn't know Israel became two nations. I was so thoroughly confused. So, for anybody who was like me, yes, after King Solomon, Israel split into, and we have the northern half, which is the 10 tribes of Israel, and they call themselves Israel. They keep that terminology. In the southern half, those two tribes down there take the name
Judah.
That's right.
Right.
So now everybody picturing, we have northern half Israel, southern half Judah. So historically, we're not going to be talking about the northern half. Northern half is actually wiped out by the Assyrian Empire in around 700 or so in that era again, and they completely wipe out northern Israel. The northern half called Israel, and that's the end of that. In fact, we still call them today the 10 lost tribes of Israel. That's because they were wiped out by the Assyrians.
Right.
And a little sidebar I think is pretty interesting. Do you remember the Samaritans in the Bible?
Oh, right. Yes.
Right. Do you remember how the Jewish nation
They
did not like the
did
Samaritans?
not like them. They didn't intermingle
Exactly.
or anything. Yeah.
So I think for anybody who's just listening, you might find this very interesting that when the Assyrian army destroyed the northern kingdom of Israel, they wanted to wipe out them completely. So they, you remember in Braveheart, they had like prima nocta. It was like they were going to breed out the Scots. Do you remember that? And the British or English, I guess, sorry, the English ruler
Right.
would engage in relations the first night of
the
a new
king
wedding.
got to
Exactly.
all the brides.
Exactly. Something similar. The Assyrians were forced to intermarry with the Jewish people in that region, and the progeny of those forced relationships, they called them Samaritans because the capital of the northern kingdom of Israel was called Samaria. So they call all these people Samaritans. So they're kind of like half Assyrian, half Jewish. They're no longer pure Jews. And of course, the Jewish people in the southern kingdom of Judah wanted nothing to do with them. They were like corrupted Jews, if you will, right?
Yeah, they weren't.
So I think that's
like
pretty
a
interesting.
Pure bloodline, so
Exactly.
to speak. Yeah.
So you'll see that later on in the Bible when they talk about the Samaritans and why the Jews hated them. That's why. Okay. But continuing on. We're going to focus the rest of our story for a bit on the southern kingdom of Judah. And we're now around 600 BC or so. Okay. So this little nation of Judah, it's a very little. Picture half of what we consider Israel today. Israel's a small country, right?
Right.
By today's standards.
Right.
Imagine less than half of that. That's all we're talking about.
Right.
And all around Judah, there are some big world powers. So we're going to go through three of them real quick because they all have a play into this story. The first one is Babylon, the ancient empire of Babylon, which
Modern day Iraq.
2 stars.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So Babylon is when you hear Babylon, consider that as modern day Iraq, if you want to consider what where we're talking about from a map perspective. Next to Babylon, there was another group of people called the Medes. The Medes were what we consider kind of between modern day Iraq and modern day Iran, was this land controlled by the Medes. And then all the way to the east, down in, kind of the southern Persian Gulf that we know today, was the little teeny nation called Persis, which ultimately becomes the Persian Empire. And when we think Persian Empire, where are we going?
Iran. Modern day Iran.
Right. So picture little Judah, huge Babylon, then the Medes, then the Persians. So that's this world that little Judah is living in. Okay, so they are completely surrounded by this world empire called Babylon. It's ruled by this guy named Nebuchadnezzar. And you may recognize that name from the Bible. So Nebuchadnezzar surrounds them and basically goes to little Judah, hey, you can become a vassal, pay me tribute, pay me taxes, and you can survive. If you don't, I'm going to kill y'all.
Right.
Right. So
they didn't really have a choice in that.
They sure didn't.
Yeah.
Right. So the kings become vassals of Babylon under Nebuchadnezzar.
Okay.
Now, the Bible talks about the Jewish nation being a stiff-necked people. It's not my words, it's the Bible's words. Basically, they tend to revolt against the powers that be. So the Jewish nation didn't really like being under control of Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians, and so they're revolting. And eventually, Nebuchadnezzar gets really sick of these revolts, and he decides that's it. So in 586 BC, this one's pretty specific, he comes in and he just sacks Jerusalem and destroys that temple that Solomon had built. Okay, so a lot of people die. You're going to hear this story repeated over and over. A lot of people die. A lot of Jewish people get killed in this process. And Nebuchadnezzar, though, he takes the best, the brightest, the lawyers, the doctors, the prettiest. Remember Esther from the book of Esther,
Yes.
right? They're pretty girls. He takes all the pretty girls, like the best of the best. Nebuchadnezzar takes them all. I don't quote me on this, but I think it was around 70,000 Jewish people. Everybody else he just kills. And they go into the temple, they destroy it, but they take, important for our story, they take all the articles of worship. So inside Solomon's temple was all these gold menorahs, gold plates, gold cups, all the articles of worship that the Jews honored God with. Nebuchadnezzar took them all.
I don't think that's going to go over well with God.
Probably not. We'll find out soon enough. So Nebuchadnezzar carts it all off. They take them back to the city of Babylon, and pretty much just kill everybody else. So where we leave little Judah is Jerusalem's been destroyed. Most of the Jewish people are killed. Those who are left are carted off to Babylon, and all the temple is destroyed. Solomon's temple is destroyed, and all the articles of worship, all this stuff is in Babylon now. Okay, we're going to shift over to the Medes real quick. Again, the Medes were next to the Babylonians. The Medes aren't too concerned about Babylon, but they're more concerned with this group next to them called the Persians. So this new ruler, young guy by the name of Cyrus, comes on the scene. Now Cyrus, he wants to expand his territory and his rule and whatnot. And so very quickly, he and the Medes come face to face, and they start battling it out in what we know today as the Persian Gulf.
Right.
So the Medes and the Persians are fighting it. And by all accounts, Cyrus was actually a really good leader. People that he conquered actually had a lot of respect for him. I think he treated people fairly well by those standards back then. So ultimately, there was this huge battle going to take place between the Medes and the Persians under Cyrus. And rather than go into this huge battle, the Medes actually captured their own king. Yeah, exactly. Wrapped them up in chains and sent them over to Cyrus. And just like that, boom, we have the Medo-Persian Empire. Cyrus now runs it all. So what was this little nation of Persis becomes Persia, which now becomes Medo-Persia. And they have a cool term for like the Achaemenid dynasty or something. That's what the historians call it, something like that. But for normal people, it's the Medo-Persian Empire. Okay. So if you remember my little geography, who is next to this new Medo-Persian Empire?
Babylon.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So now Babylon, what has happened while all this is going on? What has happened in Babylon? Remember, in Babylon is the Jewish nation. What's left of it? All their articles of worship. And Nebuchadnezzar. Well, Nebuchadnezzar has gone on and died, and there's been some other rulers come and go. And now we have this guy by the name of Nabonidus and his son Belshazzar. I'll never get the pronunciation proper. Okay. But so they're running Babylon at this time. And so we have this stage set for war, right? So the Babylonians and the Medo-Persians are going to come together and fight just because that's what they do back then, right? So Belshazzar, he's in our Bible. You're going to see him in the book of Daniel. So if anybody wants to, see him, they can read Daniel, and you'll see what he did. But there was this Mene Tekel Paraz. There's a scripture about how this hand of God wrote on a wall, and we're not going to get into all these scriptures. There's so much fun stuff, but basically, the reason those articles of worship were interesting for the story is Belshazzar was a bad dude. He's running Babylon. He's a bad dude. Okay. He takes one day, he's having his drunken party with all his lords and all their concubines and whatnot. They're having his drunken orgy, basically. And he decides, hey, wouldn't it be awesome to take all those cups that we stole from the Solomon's temple and let's have a drunken party with them? So that's what they do, according to the Bible, right? And then while this is going on, this big hand starts writing on the wall, and they bring in Daniel to interpret what this is, and there's many tekel paraz, and it's basically, in a sense, you're been weighed on the scales, you're found to be wanting, your kingdom is divided and given to another. That very night, the Persian army rolls into Babylon and conquers them. There's a ton of stuff I'm skipping.
Right.
The Battle of
Yes.
Opus and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And how do they cross the Euphrates River? I'm not going to any of that.
Yeah.
But isn't that interesting? So the Bible
Yeah.
talks about how his Babylonian empire was going to be given to another, and in comes Cyrus. And there's some things that they think they came in through these water ducts, and that the Babylon got their water from the Euphrates, and who knows what really happened. But almost overnight, Babylon falls. The Medo-Persian Empire under Cyrus rolls in, and now Persia is basically the world's leading empire. They run everything. And what's fascinating for our story is Cyrus finds this group of people, and they're
Jewish.
Jewish. What the heck are these people doing in here? You're not
Right.
Babylonian. Who are you?
Right.
Well, he starts meeting with the Jewish leaders and discovers they're Jewish people. They're from this little land called Judah over there against the Mediterranean Sea. And he's like, well, go back.
Go back. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't know what to do with them in his empire. Right?
Yeah. I don't know if he didn't know what to do with them, but I know one thing he liked is he liked tribute and he liked taxes. And people sitting in Babylon not giving him that doesn't help, but people sitting over in what we consider Israel today, paying taxes and tribute to him, do. So
Right.
Cyrus is like, hey, go back. Set up your kingdom again. Have your nation of Israel. Rebuild Jerusalem. Rebuild your temple to God. Just pay me tribute.
Right.
And so he writes this edict, and it is right in our Bible. It's actually really fascinating. The Edict of Cyrus is in 2 Chronicles. I'm actually going to read it because I think it's
Yeah.
really fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is 2 Chronicles 36, chapter 23, for anybody who wants to read it on their own. And so it says, thus says Cyrus, king of Persia. Again, Cyrus just rolled in. He owns the world now. All the kingdoms of earth, the Lord God of heaven has given me, and he has commanded me to build him a house at Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Pause. The back of this coin, the front of the coin, right underneath Trump, it says,
Right. Okay.
and he charged me to build him a house in Jerusalem. So this Cyrus, that's what he said, and it's straight from the Bible, and it's right on this coin. Continuing on, so he has commanded me to build him a house in Jerusalem, which is in Judah, again, that little teeny nation of Israel. Who is among you of all his people? May the Lord his God be with him, and let him go up. So this is called the Edict of Cyrus. He says to the Jewish nation, go back, reform your nation, become a nation, rebuild Jerusalem, rebuild your temple.
It's a second temple.
Yeah, so he launches them back.
Yep.
So picture this. This is a modern day Iranian guy telling the Jewish nation to go back and become a nation.
Yeah.
We'll get to that in a second. It's pretty interesting. So there's this term at the end, let him go up. I really don't know 100% what that means. He said, may the Lord God be with him. The people are going to go back and let him go up. So two things, we say, I'm going down south. I'm going down the Florida. Maybe it just means like a geographic thing, north, south, east, west kind of thing.
Was there an elevation there?
But yeah, see,
Yeah.
You want to talk briefly about the ascent into Jerusalem?
Sure, you're going to need to talk briefly about the ascent into Jerusalem.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I personally think when they say let him go up, I think they're referring to the main road that goes into Jerusalem. It kind of goes from north down into Jerusalem. It's right by the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea is incredibly low.
Right.
Right.
Is it I think it's the lowest point?
I think it might be the lowest point on Earth. Yeah, maybe.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, don't quote me on that. I mean, anyone can check anything that we say here. Like, check for yourself.
Yeah.
Do
your own research.
Do your own research, exactly.
But no, it's
I'm
really
pretty
low.
sure it's the lowest point,
Right.
It's pretty low.
And so the road to Jerusalem winds from the Dead Sea all the way up, these curving road all the way up in Jerusalem. It's a climb of about 3,000 feet. And so in your Bible, they have these things called the Songs of the Ascent that the Jewish nation used to sing as they're walking up from the Dead Sea or from if the cities down there all the way up to Jerusalem. And so, yeah, I think maybe he's referring to that when he says let them go up. Who knows? It doesn't matter. But so Ezra 1, or first, Ezra 1 has the same exact scripture, conversation about the Edict of Cyrus, but it adds a little something to it. So when Ezra talks about how Cyrus commanded the the Persian people, and to get all these folks right, he commanded his own people, all the people in this area, to support financially and with goods the Jewish nation as they returned to Israel and to Jerusalem. It's amazing to me. And so There was, I think, 4 mass migrations of the Jewish people from out of Babylon, which is now controlled by Persia, and back to Jerusalem. I think it went over about 80 different years, and there's all kind of books in the Bible about it. Nehemiah, again, we won't get into all that, but people can read. There's a lot of fun stuff. Obviously, the book of Esther was in that time frame. Second Chronicles is in that time frame. Daniel covers a lot of this time frame. So there's a lot of people can do their own research and really find what the Bible says about it. But over 80 years or so, the Jewish nation leaves Babylon and becomes a new nation yet again, with a rebuilt Jerusalem, rebuilt walls around Jerusalem, and a rebuilt second temple. So we're going to kind of put a pause there for a second and just think about what we just said. You may think, oh, this is boring. It's all history. Whatever. What does it have to do with this dumb coin?
Well, I can recap. I mean,
Yeah, go for it.
it was this Persian king, Cyrus, who is now modern day Iran. And he's an Arab. He is not Jewish. He's an Arab. And it was him that, I mean, basically, Israel, the nation of Israel, was kind of disbanded.
Yeah, it was gone.
Was gone. And he, it sounds like God spoke to his heart and told him to go back, become a nation again, build a temple, build a second temple. And that temple was Mount Moriah, right?
Yeah, we'll get into that.
Okay.
Yep.
And so, well, I'll let you get into that.
Yeah,
but
really-
it's really interesting. It's fascinating when you know this history and how that Jewish nation, well, the nation of Israel, was reformed.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
stop and think, everybody listening to us, just stop and think modern relations between Iran and Jerusalem. Excuse me, not Jerusalem, but the Israel nation, right? The nation of Israel.
They hate each other. I mean,
Iran
it's pretty bad.
hates Israel.
Yeah.
They say you have no right to exist. You're dogs. You should all die.
Right.
Right.
But their king.
Yeah. So let me get to that. Cyrus today is called father in Iran. He is the father of Iran. The father of modern day Iran told the Jewish nation to become a nation in Israel. That, I don't know, blows my mind, right? That,
I know God gets the credit here.
yeah.
But when we have that free will, and we're either going to listen or not listen, and so that is really, they would not be a nation
Right. If it wasn't for the
if
father
it
of Iran.
wasn't for Cyrus, because he was. It sounded like he was very a beloved ruler,
Yep.
and he had conquered all this land, and he was, had this huge empire. He could have just killed them all. He didn't have to do this, but he sent him back. Not only sent him back, but said, go build a temple.
Yeah. Isn't it fascinating? And one more thing I want to talk about before we switch away from Cyrus. He's mentioned by Isaiah, the book of Isaiah. Yeah, I think it's chapter 44, which is 150 to 175 years, depending on, where you want to consider the book of Isaiah was written. It was 150 to 175 years before Cyrus was ever born. The Bible doesn't name too many people specifically
He
by
fulfilled
name.
prophecy.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? Like Cyrus was called out that he would do exactly what he did 150 years before the guy was even born.
Now, wait, is this the one where the Jewish leaders told him he was they were like, hey, we believe you're the prophet here? That's
No, I think
written
what you're
about?
probably referring to
Okay.
is Alexander the Great.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Okay.
the Jewish nation was able to survive as a nation during that
Sorry,
phase because they pointed out to Alexander, look, you're mentioned right here in the Bible. And he was like, oh, cool, I guess you guys can live. Yeah, so,
Right.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. A little
Sorry.
different, but still. So let's put a stake in the ground right there. Cyrus, the dude behind Trump on this coin, is the father of Iran, and he's basically, in a sense, he's the one that rebirthed Israel as a nation and helped them build the second temple. Okay, let's shift over to
So-
Donald J. Trump.
You didn't say this, just on a sidebar. the temple coins. I mean, that's this one today doesn't have any like value. It's just like commemorative.
Well, apparently it has a $10 value on eBay, but
right.
but no, you're absolutely right.
Exactly.
So a temple coin in the second
Right.
temple era was a tax that all the Jewish males had to pay. It was like a half shekel they had to pay annually for the services to fund the services.
So they
of the
made
temple.
a specific coin.
So they had a specific
that.
coins minted for that, right?
Okay.
In the temple, then when the Bible talks, when the New Testament talks about the money changers, well, all these people from all over the world would come into Jerusalem to worship, and they had all their different coinage from wherever they were. The money changers would change whatever currency they had
Gotcha.
into the temple coin, of course, with a nice
So
interest rate on
only
it.
like this was like the only coin accepted, so to speak,
Right.
in the temple. So you had to exchange. You had to exchange your money to
That's exactly right.
get a temple coin.
Right.
Okay.
So this modern day temple coin is just a commemorative
it's-
coin.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
it's the
I just
Franklin
wanted
Mint
to-
of Israel.
Right.
I don't know.
Okay. Well, that explains why King Cyrus, why this modern day commemorative. Thank you. Coin. Why they would put him on it.
Absolutely.
You know,
Still remember, it's a
I
Jewish
understand.
coin. It's crazy.
But you got Donald Trump here.
All right. So
How'd
let's
he
go to-
get on there?
All right, okay. So we're back. Jerusalem's a nation again.
Mm-hmm.
We have the second temple. All's good, but not really. There's a lot of stuff going on. Obviously, we just talked about Alexander the Great. So we have a lot of different nations coming and going, and Israel's always seems to be in the center of all this.
Right.
But we're going to fast forward a bit. Okay, we're going to
Quite a
fast
bit.
forward to the Roman Empire.
Right.
All right,
Okay.
so we all remember the Roman Empire. I guess they had replaced all these different empires, and they're running the known world. And just like back in the Babylonian days, where Israel is a vassal state of King Nebuchadnezzar, Israel, not necessarily a vassal state, they're controlled by Rome, but they have some level of autonomy to run Jerusalem and to worship at the temple the way they want to worship. But just like back in the Babylon days, the Jewish nation tends to revolt, and they're constantly revolting against Jewish rule. And so we're going to go to 70 AD now. So we're no longer in the BC era. Now we're in the AD era. 70 AD, this Roman general Titus rolls in because Rome is sick of the Jewish nation revolting against Roman rule.
Okay.
And so it's been over and over and over decades. And so they're like, okay, that's it. We're gonna just end this once and for all. So the Roman general Titus rolls into Jerusalem with his massive Roman army, and just like back in the day under Babylon, they come in and they kill everybody. They go in and wipe them out. But their real target was the second temple that had been rebuilt under Cyrus. They go to the second temple and they're like, if we get rid of all this Jewish worship, like get rid of their temple completely, they're not going to have a religion anymore, and maybe they'll just stop fighting us constantly. So they go in and they whack the second temple, but not like so. The Babylonians like stole all the gold that was inside, and they destroyed it to some sense. But the Romans, like, we are wiping this thing out completely. There will be
By
no
brick.
stone left unturned in this thing, right? And so what they do is they go up on what you now see as called the Temple Mount.
Right.
So encourage everybody, you want to research it yourself, just type Temple Mount into Google. You'll see what it is today. There's a high point in Jerusalem. It's called Mount Moriah. It's not a big Colorado mountain like we'd picture. It's just a high point in Jerusalem. And they had built up all around it this massive foundation. It's called the Temple Mount.
Right.
And so the Roman army goes up there and they just start destroying everything. And remember, Jesus said there will be no stone left on top of another, and the Roman army just shoves everything off the Temple Mount. So we were there. We saw it.
Oh yeah, we saw like the rocks knocked down. There were some cornerstones.
Absolutely.
left.
It's unbelievable to see.
Yeah.
You'll see pictures of it on the internet. And it looks like, oh, those are big stones or whatever. You don't realize till you see them live. These are massive chunks of stone that have just been chucked off the edge of the
Right.
Temple Mount, and they fall down. I don't know what it is, 100 feet, 200 feet. I really don't know, but it's pretty significantly up there. And these big just chunks, they fling them off the edge and they just smash down on the ground wherever they land. And a lot of them cleared, but a lot of them are still there today. So you can see them. You can see that corner we saw. It's really fascinating.
Yeah.
So the Romans do that. They shove everything off, and that's it. The temple's gone. And it's still like that today. we'll get into more on that temple. But
when we were there, and what a blessing, we got to go to Israel just before COVID started in 2020.
we did.
I mean, literally, I think we got home maybe a week later. Israel was shut down. It was closed. So it was a huge blessing, and we were able to go on the Temple Mount. So, like you said, we saw that in person. I even brought home a necklace.
Yeah.
It's actually a piece of Mount Moriah. I should have
cool.
wore that today, but
yeah, that would have been good.
yeah. But
Next time.
I didn't. Yeah.
Okay, so moving on. So the second temple has been destroyed. A bunch of Jewish people have been killed, as usual. That was 70 A.D. Now we're going to move forward to 130 A.D.-ish. It's another 60 years, really not that far. We're going to talk about the Bar Kokhba revolt. And I'm sorry to my Jewish friends. I'm sure I just butchered that again. But the Bar Kokhba, something like that, revolt.
Right.
This one is really interesting because usually these Jewish revolts get put down fairly quickly. Again, we can't like just drive an army in, so they take years, because you have to march in instead of driving in like we would today. But this one lasted like almost 4 or 5 years because it was very successful. And so basically the entire Jewish population revolted against Roman rule. The men armed up and they fought like crazy, and they killed a lot of Romans. Like a lot. Entire Roman armies were destroyed. There's so few soldiers left. They disbanded entire armies because there was just nobody left. I mean, it was a big deal.
Wow.
And so when the Romans finally put this thing down, they killed the guy's name something Bar Kokhba or something like that, and they finally killed him. And then all the rest of the people that were part of his followers, and they finally killed them all. The Romans were so ticked. It's like, we are never going to hear again about this Jewish religion. We are wiping it off the face of the earth. We've already destroyed their temple. Now we're destroying the people, the names, everything. We are wiping it all out. So they come in, they take what's left of this sacked city of Jerusalem, and they plant a new Roman kind of colony in there. It's called like Aelia Capitolina. Basically, it was Jerusalem. Now it's Aelia Capitolina. They're not even calling it Jerusalem anymore. They don't want that name out there. They take Israel as a name for the nation, and like, we're never going to hear this word again. We are renaming this entire area Palestine. So, not getting into any of the conflict. We're not getting into the politics of this Palestinian and Israeli conflict that's currently going on as here we record this in 2024, right?
Right.
But people need to understand the name Palestine didn't even exist until around 135 A.D.
Okay.
Remember.
So at this point, you have Judaism, you have Christianity, or as they called the Way.
Right.
At this point, you do not have Islam yet.
No, Islam's not going to come on the scene for another 500 plus years.
Right.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
But
I think a lot of people don't know that as well, because I feel like when you hear the three main religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, I think sometimes, since all of our religions start at the same place,
Yeah, they are
and
centered
there's
around
a
the same
significant divide, and it goes differently, right? I think a lot of people may think that they all kind of started around the same time, or they were,
No, I think it's
together,
fair.
but it's not. I like to point that out.
Yeah.
These are significant. I mean, even between Judaism and Christianity, it's significant.
Thousands of years. Yeah.
Yeah, a huge time period. But even between Christianity and Islam,
you
it's
got 600
hundreds of years. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's really
They did
fascinating.
not
Now,
start at the same
to your
time.
point about the Judaism, there's not much left. I mean, there's definitely some Jews out there left,
Right.
but not a lot. They've been, I think I read that 75% of the Jewish population was killed in the Bar Kokhba revolt.
Wow. It's just like, it's insane.
So here we are. Where are we, right? The Second Temple's gone, and it stays that way today. The Jewish nation has been absolutely devastated. Israel's wiped off the face of the map. There is no
Right.
Israel anymore. It's gone.
It's renamed Palestine.
It's renamed Palestine. I always laugh. There's another little sidebar. Like, you'll read Wikipedia page and they'll talk about something in the like BC era, and they talk about Palestine. It's so wrong, because Palestine didn't even exist, again, as a name until 135-ish AD. So keep that in mind when you're reading your histories, right?
Right.
But
Right.
again, so we don't have any Jewish nation. We just have some Jewish people.
But the Jewish nation was established. It was there. It existed long before it was renamed Palestine.
Correct.
And so I think a lot of people don't know that.
Right.
But you can certainly understand the heated debate and that the emotions on both sides.
We're not going to get into the debate, but this at least is history and this is fact, and I think it's important for people to know it.
Right.
Okay, we just put another stake in the ground.
Okay.
So that's where we stand in around 135 AD. Now we got to go, and we're going to go about 2,000 years forward, 1,800 years forward, okay?
Going to like our time almost, right?
We're talking about Donald Trump. So what? Again, we haven't talked about him yet. What's he got to do with this? Well, we're going to fast forward all the way up now till 1948. Still no Donald Trump yet, all right?
Okay.
I wonder if he was born. He was probably born at that point, huh? I don't even know. It doesn't matter.
1948 was the end of World War II.
Right. Well, yes.
Right?
Let's actually step a couple years before World War II.
Okay.
So after the Roman Empire, eventually we have the Ottoman Empire. I know people know all this stuff, but the Ottoman Empire eventually they chose the wrong side in World War One, and the Ottoman Empire is destroyed following World War One. And now this whole region that we've been talking about, all this Iraq, Iran, Israel, all this territory, what we now know of kind of as Israel today, was called British mandated Palestine. Okay, this is like 1941 or maybe even earlier than that. And they don't want it anymore. There's like, this is a difficult area to manage. And so they start talking about kind of divesting is probably not the word they would choose, but that's what I'll use. They're going to divest this whole area, this British mandated Palestine, because it's just difficult and people are always fighting and they don't want it. But then, so they're working with the UN. Well, I'm sure not the UN at this point, but they're working with the powers that be to make this happen. And then World War II starts. Okay. So that's the end of it. Like this discussion of getting rid of what we know as modern day Israel, getting rid of it, it just dies because we have this huge, massive world war to deal with. So now the war's over in 1945, and immediately now we have this really good excuse for Britain to divest this area because the Jewish nation had, obviously it's like 6 million Jews were killed in World War II. It was absolutely horrible in the Holocaust. And so it could kind of kill two birds with one stone. We can get rid of this troubled area that we don't want, and we can return this Jewish nation that's had such trouble. So we can return them to their original homeland that, honestly, Cyrus told them to go to thousands of years earlier. And so in 1948, the UN starts. Well, I think it might have been in 1947 all the debate started. But they start debating whether they're going to return the Jewish nation to Israel and create this new nation called Israel. And boy, is there disagreement, as you could probably imagine, right? So we have like the Western powers are like, yeah, this is great. Let's take all the Jewish people and return them to Israel, and it'll be wonderful. And you have all the Middle Eastern powers, and they're like, no, this is horrible. This is Palestine. It's our land. Don't you dare think about it. And so this massive debate goes on, and eventually it is voted on to go ahead and form Israel.
Right.
Well, babe, like the map they created is insane.
Oh, right. Like the West Bank and...
Yeah, I mean, but that's just a small part of it.
Yeah.
It was like they created this Israel that had zero chance of surviving. They had Arab areas, they had Israeli areas, and it was like, like for the whole nation of Israel, it had no chance of staying that way. If everybody kumbaya'd, I guess it could have been great. But come on, these are people that don't necessarily like each other. They don't see it eye to eye. There was no way this was going to happen. So, of course, in 1948, Israel becomes a nation, immediately go right to war. We have the Arab-Israeli war, and they're fighting it out. And, some people would say it's the protection of God. Others would just say it's, happenstance, whatever. The Jewish nation wins a lot of territory. And then we have more wars in the 60s and more wars in the 70s. And now we're skipping a ton of stuff here.
Right.
But
Six-Day War. Right. Exactly.
Right. 6-Day War. But we get what we now know as the land of Israel, as we know today, is formed over this period of time. And so we have Israel once again become a nation. Again, think about that. Israel's been gone. Like, how many nations do you know disappeared? They're no longer, they're gone. They don't exist. And in 2,000 years, they come back. It's pretty remarkable, don't you think?
Oh, it's absolutely miraculous. I wonder how that happened.
Yeah, I wonder.
I think...
I
don't want to get into it, but I think God has a plan for the nation of Israel. And I think it's pretty clear because I don't think that any people group could have pulled that off without the hand of God.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So Here we are,
including back when Cyrus sent them back.
Yeah, exactly. So, so we go forward. We are a nation. They grow, and it's interesting. In 1949, it might have been 1948, just like King David did at 1000 BC, where we started this whole journey. Israel declares Jerusalem's our capital.
Right.
Where are all the embassies today for the world that deal with Israel? Where are all the embassies?
Tel Aviv.
Yeah, interesting. So why are all the embassies in Tel Aviv when Israel says our capital is Jerusalem?
Yeah, pretty much I'm sure there's an example someone could find out there, but as far as I know, all the nations, the embassies are all in capitals of nations. I mean, I can't name one that isn't,
right?
But there might be one. I don't know.
Right. So the question is why, and there's some pretty easy answers. The United States has got to take a lot of the fault here. The United States wanted to play both sides of this. They wanted to have support for the Jewish nation because there was a ton of lobbying, and both sides, the Democrats and the Republicans, were getting a ton of money from Jewish lobbyists. You don't want to lose that. But on the other side, we needed oil from the Arab states. So we're trying to play both sides. So in 1948, when they said Jerusalem's our capital, the United States is like, yeah, we're not going to recognize that. We're going to say it's Tel Aviv. So they're not. That's why they don't anger our Arab partners. And so we go down and build the embassy in Tel Aviv. Everybody else does the same thing. And if you're Jerusalem, or excuse me, the Jewish nation, are you a nation or not? Do you have the right to exist or not? Like, do we have the privileges of being a nation or not? And the United States is not helping this cause. Let's fast forward to 1980. They do it again. Same exact thing happens. Yeah, no, we're not gonna move. But 1980, Jerusalem did become the capital for the Israelis. In 1949, 1948, it did not. They're like, fine, I guess we'll make Tel Aviv our capital. They eventually, in 1980, moved it up. And they're like, no, kind of screw you guys. This is our capital. It's Jerusalem. And then once again, United States included, we're like, nah, we don't think so. We're keeping everything down here in Tel Aviv.
There different times? I don't know if this is correct or not, but were there like some politicians or some presidents that would acknowledge Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, but would not agree to move the embassy?
Yeah, definitely.
So
I don't
like say it, but they wouldn't by their action.
Right.
It was, it's usually your action that people feel. Yeah.
Right. By their fruit, you'll know them.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think it was Bill Clinton in 95 certainly was one of them that said that. I know American policy for like the last 30 years has been that Jerusalem is in fact the capital of Israel, but nobody's done anything about it until, love him or hate him, Donald J. Trump. Finally getting somewhere here. 2017, Trump as president says, you know what? If you say Jerusalem's your capital,
then we're going to say
we say it's your capital, and we're also going to move our embassy.
Right.
So in 2018, May of 2018, we moved our embassy to Jerusalem, to a lot of bluster and fighting, or the media said, we're going to end up in World War III. Of course, none of that came to be. And not too many nations followed suit. Some did. Some other nations joined us in moving the embassies up to Jerusalem. But it was, it was a big deal within, the American government. It was been a big deal within American media. But in Israel, it was enormous deal.
Rock star status. Right. I mean, it was we were there.
Right.
We saw the flags.
Yeah, they named roads after Trump.
Right.
This was a big deal.
This was huge.
Why do you think it was so huge?
Because the rest of the world was not acknowledging, and no one since Cyrus acknowledged Jerusalem as their capital.
Right. And implicitly kind of implying that Israel has a right to exist.
Right.
That's the big deal. Cyrus said, become a nation. Trump said, you are a nation. The United States, the supposed leader of the free world, the good guys, whatever. You, Israel, are a real nation. You have a right to exist. And if you say Jerusalem's your capital, we're going to
say it too. And we're going to stand with you. And also, they are our greatest ally in that area, in that Middle Eastern area.
Yeah.
So there's a temple in the back of this coin.
Yeah. So I hope we've laid out a really good foundation
Now
for
we've already established 2 of them have been destroyed. So what's this temple?
Okay, but before we do that, I forgot about the wine cork. Talk about the wine cork.
Okay.
So,
Can you tell us what it is now?
yeah, so it's a stone. So that is a stone artifact. It was found in an archaeological dig in modern day Iraq. And that stone has Persian writing on it, and it talks about the Edict of Cyrus and how he sent Jerusalem back to become a nation. So when like modern day Iran says, no, that never happened. You don't have a right to exist. Like Cyrus never sent you back.
Evidence here.
The Jewish nation's like, oh yeah, well, we're going to put it right here on this coin because we know darn well that that's not true. So totally missed it. Thought it was pretty important. Let's get back to that. Okay.
That is really important.
Onto the back of the coin. We've laid out Donald Trump. We laid out who Cyrus is, this temple. Are we celebrating what was back in the past, 2,000 years ago, destroyed in 70 AD? Or are we going forward?
I don't know. I think you have that answer, though.
I do. But we're going to let a Jewish person tell us this, not us schmucks, right?
Right.
This is from the Mikdash Educational Center, the leader of this center in Jerusalem. They are the folks that came up with this coin initially. He says, Trump and Cyrus are non-Jewish leaders who played an essential role in the return of the Jews to Jerusalem. Hopefully, Trump will continue in this path and, like Cyrus, play a central role in the building of the temple. Pause. We know the temple's gone. It's actually been knocked out twice. So this is a rebuilding of the temple.
A 3rd temple.
This is going to be a 3rd temple up on the Temple Mount.
Yes.
Okay, folks.
But there's something in the way. There's something there now.
Yeah, we got to talk just briefly about the temple.
This might be this is tense. It's a tense conversation.
Yeah, so the most hotly contested real estate on the planet is the Temple Mount today. If you understand how Jerusalem works, the nation of Israel controls Jerusalem, but the eastern side of Jerusalem is considered occupied territory. That is really for the Palestinian people, not the Jewish people. And there's been
who considers it occupied?
The UN.
Okay.
And most of the world. And the Temple Mount is actually by rule under control of Jordan.
Right.
The nation of Jordan. Mm-hmm. And they have what are up there called the Waqf. I'm, again, butchering it. It's WAQF. The Waqf guards are actually the people who up on the Temple Mount guarding it. So all surrounding the Temple Mount is the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force. We're going to talk about let's going up there in a second because that's an interesting story.
Okay.
But the IDF guards every entrance onto the Temple Mount. The Jordanian guards control the Temple Mount, and it's pretty scary up there. And so this gentleman at the Mikdash Educational Center says we're going to rebuild a temple up there. Well, what's up there today?
Dome of the Rock.
The Dome of the Rock, which is a Muslim holy site surrounding that rock or the stone where they believe Abraham and Isaac, they believe Ishmael was part of that.
Right.
So it's the Dome of the Rock is built around an exposed piece of ancient rock where they think that occurred. And there's also the Al-Aqsa Mosque is up there.
Right.
Right? Yeah. So now we're going to build a Jewish temple up there too? Oh, that's going to get interesting, right?
Yeah.
Can you just real quick, I mean, like the 30-second version, what was it like going up on the Temple Mountain? What did you feel?
It was tense. I didn't feel unsafe or anything like that when we were there. It was just, you just had to be careful what you say.
Oh, yeah.
And what you don't say. And you cannot pray at all. You can't have anything that's illegal. It's illegal.
Let me jump in because you didn't mention there's an actual military checkpoint.
Right.
Exactly. As a tourist, you have to go through a checkpoint to get up there.
Bring like a prayer book or a Bible or anything. You're not allowed to have anything. Not even like a journal. I mean, anything. No like religious.
No religious paraphernalia at all. Is allowed up there. And when you get up there, you're not allowed to pray. Not under your breath. You're not allowed to pray.
Jews and
Christians
are not allowed to.
Right. So when you get up on the mount, for me, I don't know what you felt, but I felt a palpable tenseness. Mm-hmm. It is not an area you want to mess with. Like it is. it's tense. That's probably just the best word to choose. And I'm not saying anything bad about any people or any people groups up there. It's just very tense. It is a tinderbox waiting to explode. There's been a lot of issues up there, and it boils over badly on both sides. And you get these wars coming out of just all from the Temple Mount. And this McDash Educational Center wants Trump, and I'll read it again. Hopefully, Trump will continue in this path and, like Cyrus, play a central role in the rebuilding of the temple. There's one more thing we got to say, and we're going to put this thing, we're going to end it. In Matthew 24, Jesus is talking about end times. And he talks about how at the end of days, when you see I'm trying to remember the exact terminology, but when you see the abomination of desolation that Daniel talked about in the book of Daniel arrive in the holy, or take place in the holy place. Well, the holy place is referring to the rebuilt third temple. So Jesus is laying down that none of this end time stuff can occur without a rebuilt third temple, because there's this thing called the abomination of desolation has got to occur inside the holy place. The holy place is the third temple.
Right now, there isn't one.
There is no third temple.
Right.
So, then you jump into the book of Revelation, all these crazy end times things that, I know a lot of people get freaked out about. None of that occurs without this rebuilt third temple. Isn't it interesting that this coin is talking about, and I'm imagining funding in some way, a rebuilt third temple?
Right.
And then just this week, all this news started about the red heifer.
Red heifers.
Remember the red heifer news?
They're adorable. And
what is the red heifer used for? The red heifer is used for the cleansing of the Jewish temple.
So unfortunately, they will be sacrificed, these red heifers, eventually. But they found the perfect ones.
In Texas.
And they
shipped them over to Israel.
They shipped them to Israel.
And they're there now today.
They're there. They're being protected. They're being raised, or taken care of, because from what I understand, they will be, but it has to be a perfect sacrifice.
Yeah. But,
so they're
so think about this. We have a coin funding the rebuilt third temple. We have red heifers being sent over. Something's happening. Encourage everybody, keep your eye on news about the third temple.
Certainly, they're in the, I would imagine that they already have plans. And plans for that temple. They just have to get the go-ahead to be able to build it, right? So that wraps up this crazy coin.
We have Cyrus, the chief father of Iran, who told Israel, go back and become a nation. Unbelievable. That happened in the 500 BC time frame. We have Donald J. Trump in the 2000 AD time frame saying, Jerusalem or Israel, you are a nation. We recognize you. You have the rights to exist, and Jerusalem is your capital, just like King David said in 1000 BC. And we have this third temple, clearly more than just an imagination. There are plans to get this third temple rebuilt. And hence, we have this incredible Trump temple coin.
This is awesome. I'm really enjoying this. This is the first one that we've done. And if you enjoyed it, please subscribe, and ding that notification bell so you won't miss any more content.
And I want to jump in. This is our book that we've written. It's called The Lucifer Project. It's an incredible read. Love for you to get it. And just go to theluciferproject.com. Thanks, everybody. Had a great time.